Have you ever wondered, if we can build entire cities on water, could an ancient civilization have practiced agriculture on floating islands? It sounds like science fiction, but that's exactly how the Aztec gardeners fed a mighty empire. Picture this: lush, green gardens drifting on the surface of a lake, providing food for millions. And all of this happened centuries before the term sustainable agriculture even existed. Get ready for a journey through time, back to a world where floating islands weren't just dreams but reality. This is the story of how Aztec gardeners farmed floating islands, told in a slow-paced, gently humorous historical style designed to help you relax and drift peacefully off to sleep. Today's story consists of 8 chapters. Chapter 1. Dawn over the lake, the Aztec civilization and the setting of Tenochtitlan. An introduction to the rise of the Aztec Empire, focusing on the unique geographical location of its capital, Tenochtitlan, on Lake Texcoco, and the early environmental challenges the Aztecs faced. Chapter 2. Chinampas, the Aztecs' floating agricultural marvel. A deep dive into the origins, structure, and working principles of Chinampas, man-made agricultural islands. A comparison with contemporary farming methods highlights their uniqueness. Chapter 3. Construction techniques and materials, the skillful hands of the Aztecs. An exploration of the Chinampas' construction process, from collecting materials like mud, reeds, and bulrushes to the anchoring techniques and methods used to maintain their stability on water. Chapter 4. Life on the floating islands, farmers in the Chinampa ecosystem. A look into the daily lives of Aztec farmers working on the Chinampas, the types of crops cultivated, and the diverse ecosystems these islands created. Chapter 5. Overcoming challenges, water control and pest management. An analysis of how the Aztecs managed water levels in the canal systems surrounding Chinampas, along with the natural methods they used to control pests and maintain soil fertility. Chapter 6. Chinampas and the prosperity of the Aztec Empire. A discussion of the crucial role Chinampas played in providing a stable food supply, supporting population growth, and contributing to the economic and military strength of the Aztec Empire. Chapter 7. The legacy lives on Chinampas today and lessons for the future. An exploration of what remains of the Chinampa system in modern-day Mexico, their historical and cultural significance, and the sustainable agricultural lessons we can learn from the Aztecs. Chapter 8. The future of floating agriculture, from ancient to modern times. A connection between Chinampa techniques and modern floating or urban farming projects around the world, discussing both the potential applications and the challenges that lie ahead. And we will begin with Chapter 1. Dawn over the lake, the Aztec civilization and the world of Tenochtitlan. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 1. An empire born from legend. Picture this. In the heart of a vast valley, surrounded by majestic volcanoes and shimmering lakes, a great empire began to rise. This is the story of the Aztecs, a people whose journey began with a mysterious prophecy. They were the Mexica, a nomadic tribe from the north, endlessly wandering for centuries in search of a divine sign, a message from the gods that would tell them where to settle and build their homeland. But the prophecy was not a map or a clear instruction. Instead, it was a poetic and powerful image. They would find an eagle perched on a cactus, gripping a serpent in its beak, on a small island in the middle of a lake. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But to the Aztecs, this was fate. Their journey was anything but easy. They were driven away, looked down upon by other settled tribes in the Valley of Mexico. They lived as outsiders, constantly struggling to survive. But it was through these harsh trials that the Aztecs forged their resilience and remarkable adaptability. Finally, around the year 1325 CE, they discovered the long-awaited sign, not on fertile, easy-to-cultivate land, but on a swampy, humid island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. This vast lake, with its brackish waters and surrounding marshes, seemed like an impossible place to build anything. But to the Aztecs, it wasn't an obstacle, it was an opportunity. And so, on that seemingly barren island they began to build Tenochtitlan. From a humble, impoverished settlement, Tenochtitlan rapidly grew into the magnificent capital of an ever-expanding empire. In just a few centuries, the Aztecs transformed that unpromising landscape into a bustling urban center, filled with majestic pyramid temples, an intricate network of canals and thriving marketplaces. This remarkable rise was not just due to military might or architectural talent, but also thanks to one key factor: their ability to overcome seemingly impossible environmental challenges, especially when it came to feeding a growing population. How did they manage to do that on a lake? That is the question we'll explore together. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 2, Challenges from the Waves. Life on Lake Texcoco. Life on Lake Texcoco brought both opportunities and countless challenges for the Aztecs. On one hand, the lake provided an abundant source of fish, migratory birds and aquatic plants like reeds, which were crucial materials for construction and fuel. The network of both natural and man-made canals also facilitated transportation and the movement of goods, turning Tenochtitlan into a bustling trade center. Imagine, instead of muddy dirt roads, everything was transported by boats gliding through winding canals, a scene quite unlike the inland cities of that time. However, on the other hand, Lake Texcoco was also a demanding companion. Its water levels changed unpredictably, especially during the rainy season, causing severe floods that could destroy homes and crops. The lake's water was mostly brackish due to evaporation and the lack of outflow to the sea, which made it difficult to cultivate traditional food crops that require fresh water. You couldn't simply toss seeds into the ground and expect them to sprout in saline soil. It was an extremely daunting problem for a rapidly growing civilization that needed to feed hundreds of thousands of people. To cope with these challenges, the Aztecs continually innovated. They had no modern technology, no complex machinery, but they had intelligence, perseverance, and an extraordinary ability to observe nature. They developed a complex system of dikes to control the water level and prevent flooding. These massive dikes, built from mud and stone, not only protected the city but also allowed them to manage the brackish and freshwater zones of the lake. This was a testament to their remarkable engineering skills, especially considering the scale of such a project. But the biggest question remained: how to farm effectively on a swampy island surrounded by brackish water. The natural land on the island was too scarce and infertile to meet the food demands of an increasingly crowded city. Traditional land-based agriculture wasn't an option here. The Aztecs needed an entirely new solution, a revolutionary approach that would turn the watery environment itself into fertile farmland. And their answer, a masterpiece of ancient agriculture, was the Chinampas, artificial floating islands that we'll explore in more detail in later chapters. These didn't just solve the food problem, they transformed Tenochtitlan into a vast, floating garden. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 3, The Urgent Need, Feeding a Super City. Imagine yourself in the shoes of the Aztecs in the 14th century. They were building a mighty city, Tenochtitlan, and the population was booming. At its peak, Tenochtitlan is estimated to have had between 200,000 to 300,000 inhabitants, with some even claiming the number could have reached as high as 500,000. Compare that to European cities of the same era. London and Paris had populations of only about 50,000 to 80,000. Tenochtitlan was truly a super city of its time, one of the largest in the world. This raises a critical question. How do you feed such a vast number of people, especially when the city sits on a marshy island with limited arable land? The need for food wasn't just about survival, it was also about maintaining social stability, feeding the military, and supporting religious rituals. Without enough food, there would be famine, unrest, and ultimately the collapse of the empire. This placed enormous pressure on the Aztec leadership. While the lands around Lake Texcoco did offer some fertile areas, they were nowhere near enough to meet the full demands of Tenochtitlan. Transporting food from distant regions was difficult, costly, and inefficient for ensuring a stable daily supply. The Aztecs needed a large-scale food production solution located within or very near their city. They couldn't rely forever on raiding or tribute from other tribes to sustain themselves. What they needed was an independent, sustainable, and efficient agricultural system. And this is where the brilliance of the Aztecs truly shone. Instead of trying to reclaim barren land or expand agriculture into faraway territories, they turned to the very environment they inhabited, the lake. They transformed a weakness into a strength. With intelligence and ingenuity, they developed a completely unique farming method, turning seemingly useless swamps into the most fertile lands in their empire. This was not just an agricultural solution, it was a matter of survival, and a powerful testament to the resilience and innovation of a civilization facing some of the harshest environmental challenges. That solution, as we've mentioned, was the Chinampas, which we'll explore more deeply in the next chapter. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 4, the foundation of a great solution, an overview of terrain and climate. To truly grasp the brilliance of the Chinampas, we need to take a step back and understand the natural setting in which they emerged, the terrain and climate of the Valley of Mexico. This valley, located at an elevation of around 2,240 meters, 7,350 feet, above sea level, is surrounded by high mountain ranges, including active volcanoes. This highland location creates a unique climate, with a distinct rainy season from May to October and a dry season from November to April. During the rainy season, vast amounts of water flow into Lake Texcoco and the surrounding lakes, causing water levels to rise dramatically and resulting in frequent flooding. This posed a serious problem, not only threatening settlements but also destroying crops if not effectively managed. On the other hand, during the dry season, rainfall drops significantly, and evaporation causes the lake levels to fall sharply, leaving behind marshy, salt-affected lands. Farming in these conditions became more difficult than ever. It's important to note that Lake Texcoco was not a typical freshwater lake. As mentioned before, it was part of a closed basin lake system with no outlet to the sea. Thousands of years of continuous evaporation had led to a high salt concentration in the water, turning it brackish. This meant that most of the Aztec staple crops, such as maize, beans, and squash, which all require fresh water, couldn't grow directly in the waterlogged soil or be irrigated with lake water. This presented an enormous ecological barrier to anyone trying to practice agriculture in the area. And yet, it was precisely the abundance of water, even brackish water, that held the key. The Aztecs saw potential in using that very water to create fertile agricultural land. They didn't merely exploit what was available, they actively engineered an entirely new farming environment. By combining deep knowledge of their local ecosystem with impressive technical skill, they transformed useless marshes into highly productive floating gardens. They turned a place that might have seemed like an agricultural nightmare into one of the most efficient food-producing regions of the ancient world. And that is the origin story of the Chinampas, the agricultural wonders we will begin to explore in detail in Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Chinampas, the floating agricultural wonder of the Aztecs. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 1. What are Chinampas? A definition beyond just floating gardens. When people hear the word Chinampas, many immediately picture floating gardens, drifting gently on the water's surface. However, to truly grasp their brilliance, we need to dig a little deeper. Chinampas are not merely patches of soil floating aimlessly. They are a purposefully constructed agricultural system, an ecological engineering marvel of the Aztecs, designed to transform unusable swampland into highly fertile and productive farmland. Imagine a network of rectangular or square artificial islands, surrounded by canals. A typical Chinampa could stretch hundreds of meters in length, while its width was usually much narrower, around 5 to 10 meters. This specific size was no accident. The narrow width allowed water from the surrounding canals to easily seep into the soil, providing constant moisture to crops without the need for complex irrigation. At the same time, it made cultivation and management much more efficient. Chinampas were essentially beds of soil built up from the bottom of a lake. This process required tremendous effort and a deep understanding of aquatic environments. In essence, the Aztecs created land where previously there had only been water and swamp. They continuously expanded their farmland by constructing more Chinampas, turning large portions of Lake Texcoco into a mosaic of lush green planting beds and glistening canals. This was entirely different from traditional land reclamation. They were literally creating new land. What makes Chinampas truly remarkable is their natural ability to provide continuous nutrients and moisture to crops. The canal system was not only a transportation network but also a vital source of water and nutrients. The lakebed's sediment, rich in organic matter from decomposing aquatic plants and animals, was regularly dredged and spread onto the surface of the Chinampas. This process not only enriched the soil but also maintained canal depth, ensuring easy boat navigation and constant water flow. It was a closed-loop, self-sustaining, and highly resilient system, a testament to the Aztecs' deep wisdom in harmonizing with nature, rather than trying to dominate it by force. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 2, Creating Land from Water, Structure and Operating Principles. To better understand how Chinampas work, we need to take a closer look at their structure. These are not rafts or floating plots of land, but rather gardens built in a fixed position, on top of water and mud. The construction of a Chinampa is a testament to the meticulousness and deep hydrological knowledge of the Aztecs. First, the Aztecs would mark off the area where the Chinampa was to be built, usually a narrow rectangular strip over shallow water or swamp. Then they would drive rows of wooden stakes into the lakebed to form the framework and fix the boundaries of the Chinampa. These stakes were often made from willow or other water-loving trees that could root quickly and hold the soil firmly in place, crucial for maintaining the stability of the structure. Next came the most important step, piling up the soil. Mud, clay, and decomposed organic matter were dredged from the lakebed and filled in between the rows of wooden stakes. Layer by layer, this mixture was built up into a thick, fertile bed of arable soil. Sometimes additional plant materials like reeds, grasses, or dried corn stalks were used to create a firmer base or to boost soil fertility. This process not only created land for cultivation but also deepened the surrounding canals, ensuring water could continue to circulate freely. The uniqueness of Chinampas lies in their principle of self-irrigation. Because the plots are narrow and surrounded by canals, water from the channels constantly seeps upward into the soil through capillary action. This means crops always receive sufficient moisture, even during dry seasons, without the need for complex irrigation systems or laborious water transport. Imagine it as a self-service hydration system, offering a remarkably efficient and resource-saving solution. Moreover, the canals served not only as a water source but also as a natural fertilizer reservoir. The nutrient-rich mud from the canal beds, full of organic matter from decaying plants and aquatic animal waste, was periodically dredged and applied directly onto the Chinampa beds. This was a perfect nutrient recycling process that kept the soil fertile without chemical fertilizers. The entire system stands as a brilliant example of the Aztecs' profound understanding of natural cycles and their ability to turn seemingly limited resources into extraordinary advantages. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 3, Exceptional Productivity, Advantages over Traditional Agriculture. What made the Chinampas a revolutionary agricultural solution, even superior to traditional land-based farming methods? The answer lies in their astonishing productivity, something that dry fields could hardly compete with. One of their greatest advantages was the ability to farm continuously year-round. While land-based agriculture depended heavily on rainfall and seasonal cycles, the Chinampas benefited from the constant supply of water and humidity provided by the surrounding canals. This meant that the Aztecs could plant and harvest multiple crops per year, sometimes up to 7 harvests. Compare that to some other regions where only 1 or 2 harvests per year were possible. The difference is immense, ensuring a steady and abundant food supply for a large population. Secondly, the fertility of the soil on the Chinampas was undeniable. Regular dredging and the application of nutrient-rich mud from the canal bottoms created an incredibly fertile topsoil. This mud was full of nutrients from decomposed plant matter, algae, and aquatic organisms, essentially acting as a perfect natural fertilizer. This not only allowed crops to thrive but also reduced the need for crop rotation or fallowing the land, common practices in traditional agriculture to maintain soil fertility. Moreover, the Chinampas optimized space usage. Instead of letting water surfaces go to waste, the Aztecs turned them into highly efficient garden beds. Every square meter of a Chinampa was used to its full potential. Thanks to the canal system, transporting crops and supplies became much easier than walking on dirt roads. Imagine small boats loaded with corn, beans, squash, and chili peppers gliding over the water, delivering produce straight from the fields to the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan. Finally, the unique microclimate created by the Chinampas also contributed to their high productivity. The presence of water helped regulate temperature, cooling the heat of the day and retaining warmth during the night, creating ideal growing conditions. It was truly a self-sustaining ecological farming system, a testament to the Aztecs' deep wisdom in understanding and harnessing natural laws to advance their civilization. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 4, Chinampas and Contemporary Agriculture, a contrasting comparison. To truly grasp the significance of Chinampas, let's place them side by side with some contemporary farming methods we're familiar with. This isn't to diminish modern advancements, but rather to highlight the uniqueness and remarkable effectiveness of an ancient technology. Today, modern industrial agriculture often relies heavily on external inputs. Heavy machinery, synthetic chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and complex irrigation systems that consume large amounts of water. We often see vast fields watered by massive sprinkler systems or plowed by large tractors. The main goal is to maximize yield per unit of land, at any cost. However, this frequently comes with negative consequences: soil degradation, water pollution, loss of biodiversity, and dependency on non-renewable resources. In contrast, Chinampas are a prime example of ecological and sustainable agriculture. They function almost like a closed-loop ecosystem. The Aztecs didn't need heavy machinery, they relied on manual labor and simple tools. They didn't need synthetic fertilizers. Nutrient-rich mud from the lake bed provided all the nourishment required. They didn't need complex irrigation systems. Natural capillary action did the job. And most importantly, they didn't deplete resources, they renewed them. Dredging the mud not only fertilized the soil but also kept the canals clean and deep, supporting a thriving aquatic ecosystem. Even when compared to modern hydroponics or aeroponics, methods that grow plants without soil using nutrient solutions, Chinampas still present fundamental differences. These high-tech systems often require strict environmental controls, significant energy, and high upfront investment. Chinampas, on the other hand, are a low-tech, low-cost solution that remains incredibly effective and sustainable over time, fully integrated with the natural environment. In summary, while modern agriculture often seeks to control and reshape the environment to suit the crops, the Aztecs, through Chinampas, found ways to live in harmony with nature and make the most of what it had to offer. They didn't just farm, they created a fully functional food-producing ecosystem, a living testament to ancient wisdom and humanity's extraordinary ability to adapt. It's not just boring history, it's a priceless lesson for the future. And now, let's begin Chapter 3, Construction Techniques and Materials, the Skilled Hands of the Aztec People. In this chapter, we will dive into the construction techniques and materials the Aztecs used to create their legendary Chinampas. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 1. The Birth of a Marvel, Site Selection and Preparation. Building a Chinampa was not a spontaneous task. It was a process that required careful planning, especially in selecting the location and preparing the foundation. The Aztecs, with their deep knowledge of the lake environment, knew how to make the most of natural features to achieve optimal results. They often chose shallow water areas where lakebed mud was easily accessible and where there was sufficient sunlight for crops to thrive. The ideal depth was usually no more than an adult's waist, making it possible to dive down and collect materials from the bottom. Imagine Aztec workers immersing themselves in the water, carefully searching for areas with the richest, most fertile mud. It was hard, physically demanding work, requiring patience and determination. Once the location was identified, the next step was to mark the boundaries of the Chinampa. This was typically done by driving rows of wooden stakes into the lakebed to form a rectangular frame. These stakes served not only as markers but also as the initial framework to hold the structure in place. The Aztecs demonstrated impressive skill in calculating the size and spacing of the stakes to ensure both stability and optimal farming conditions. The width of each Chinampa was kept narrow, around 5 to 10 meters, to maximize the capillary action of water, while the length could stretch for hundreds of meters, depending on the terrain and desired scale. The main material used for the frame was wood, especially branches or trunks of willow trees, such as ahui jote, a native variety of willow. Willows were favored not just for their flexibility and resistance to rotting in water, but also for another crucial reason. They could quickly grow roots and penetrate deep into the lake bed, forming a dense, strong root system. Just imagine, when these willows matured, their roots would weave into the soil like a natural mesh of rebar, anchoring the Chinampa firmly and preventing erosion or displacement caused by currents or waves. This is a brilliant early example of biotechnical engineering being applied centuries ago. Though this preparation stage was only the beginning, it already showcased the Aztecs' profound understanding of the natural environment and their ability to intelligently select materials to construct these agricultural marvels. They weren't merely farming, they were creating entirely new land. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 2, Building the Land, from lakebed mud to fertile soil beds. Once the framework of the Chinampa was established using wooden stakes and willow branches, the next step was the most crucial, and where the true magic began, creating the layer of arable soil. This was a continuous, repetitive process that demanded perseverance and significant labor. The Aztecs used small boats, called canoes, to navigate the canals and collect materials. The primary material for constructing Chinampa soil was mud from the lake bed. But this wasn't just ordinary soil, it was a treasure trove of nutrients. Over thousands of years, decaying plant matter, algae, insects, and other aquatic organisms had settled and decomposed at the bottom of the lake, forming a layer of dark mud rich in organic matter and minerals. Think of it as a kind of natural compound fertilizer, pre-prepared by the lake's own ecosystem. Aztec workers used simple tools, perhaps large scoops or baskets woven from reeds, to dredge this nutrient-rich mud from the bottoms of canals and the lake. The mud was then loaded onto boats and transported to the Chinampa construction site. Layer by layer, the mud was deposited within the pre-built wooden stake framework. But they didn't just dump mud, they interwove the layers of mud with plant materials such as reeds, grass, straw, dried corn leaves, and other aquatic vegetation found around the lake. These plant layers not only helped hold the mud in place but also decomposed gradually, adding more organic matter and helping aerate the soil. This process of layering mud and plant material continued until the new soil bed rose slightly above the water's surface, forming a raised bed higher than the lake level. This height was critical to ensure that the plant roots wouldn't be constantly waterlogged, while still allowing them to draw moisture from below. Once the desired height was reached, the bed was left to dry and settle for a while. Gradually, young willow trees planted along the edges of the Chinampa would grow, their roots penetrating deep into the new soil, weaving it together and stabilizing the entire structure to prevent erosion. This was truly a process of land creation. The Aztecs weren't just farming, they were transforming vast bodies of water into some of the most fertile land imaginable, showcasing their incredible intelligence and work ethic. Each Chinampa stood as a living testament to how they interacted with and shaped their environment to support the survival and growth of their civilization. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 3, Secure Anchoring, Ensuring the Stability of Floating Islands. One of the biggest challenges in building islands on water is preventing them from drifting away, being eroded by waves, wind, or currents. The Aztecs addressed this issue with remarkable ingenuity, combining construction techniques with a deep understanding of plant ecology. The key to anchoring and maintaining the stability of the Chinampas lay in planting trees along their edges. These plants were carefully selected, particularly willow species, with ahujote being a prime example, and other water-loving trees with strong, fast-growing root systems. As soon as the raised soil beds were completed, saplings or cuttings of these plants were densely planted along the borders of each Chinampa. You can think of these tree roots as natural anchors. As they grow, their roots dig deep into the mud, intertwining to form a dense network that holds the soil together. Like a natural iron mesh, they stabilize the Chinampa structure, prevent water erosion, and make the artificial islands sturdier than ever. This was more than just a construction technique, it was an advanced form of biological engineering for its time. Beyond soil stabilization, these rows of trees also served as natural windbreaks, reducing the impact of waves on the Chinampa surface. This was especially crucial on large lakes like Texcoco, where significant waves could occur during windy days. They also created a favorable microclimate, providing shade for workers and certain crops, while helping retain soil moisture. In addition to planting trees, the Aztecs used other materials such as stones, gravel, or broken pottery shards to reinforce the edges of Chinampas in specific areas, especially where currents or strong waves were more intense. This added a layer of mechanical protection, enhancing the durability of the structure. The combination of building up the soil base with mud, anchoring it with natural root systems, and reinforcing it with solid materials created a sustainable Chinampa system capable of withstanding the environmental shifts of the lake. It stands as a testament to the Aztecs' refined engineering skills, showing they were not only masters of land-based construction but also brilliant architects in harnessing and transforming aquatic environments. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 4. Surpassing Technological Limits, Human Strength and Creativity. When looking at what the Aztecs accomplished with Chinampas, one major question often arises: how did they manage to do all of this without modern machinery, without engines, without electronic tools? The answer lies in a combination of immense manual labor, exceptional organizational skills, and relentless creativity. Just imagine, every layer of mud dredged from the bottom of the lake had to be done by hand, or with simple tools like scoops and baskets. Tons of materials had to be transported by boat, then unloaded onto the raised beds. It was grueling work that demanded endurance and seamless coordination among many people. Large Chinampas couldn't be built by a single person or even a small group. They were the result of a whole community's effort, sometimes even the labor of an entire city. The Aztecs organized labor efficiently, assigned tasks clearly, and maintained high discipline to carry out such large-scale projects. The brilliance of the Aztecs wasn't just in their use of human power, it was also in how they made full use of the materials naturally available to them. They didn't need to import expensive resources. Everything was right there. Nutrient-rich mud from the lake bed, reeds, bulrushes, grasses, and woody plants growing nearby. They turned what seemed like useless debris into valuable building materials, an embodiment of their philosophy of living in harmony with nature and finding solutions from within their environment. It's a powerful lesson in sustainability and self-sufficiency. Moreover, building and maintaining Chinampas wasn't just a technical task, it was an art. It required deep understanding of hydrology, water cycles, soil properties, and plant growth. The Aztecs accumulated this knowledge over generations, through observation, experimentation, and continuous improvement. They knew when to dredge mud, when to plant crops, and how to optimize productivity. This was a form of applied science in an ancient civilization. In short, the construction of Chinampas is a striking testament to how human intelligence and resilience can overcome seemingly insurmountable limits. Despite lacking complex technology, the Aztecs created one of the most advanced and efficient agricultural systems in history, laying a solid foundation for the prosperity of an empire. Wonderful. Let's explore life on the floating islands with Chapter 4. Life on the floating islands, farmers and the Chinampa ecosystem. Discover the daily lives of Aztec farmers working on the Chinampas, the crops they cultivated, and the diverse ecosystems they helped create. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 1. A day in the life of Aztec gardeners, sowing and nurturing. Imagine a sunrise over Lake Texcoco, as morning mist still lingers above the canals and the golden rays of the sun begin to shine on the lush green rows of the Chinampas. The life of Aztec gardeners, known as Chinamperos, starts very early, in a steady rhythm of labor deeply intertwined with the land and sky. Unlike the direct sowing of seeds into fields, the Aztecs used an effective technique to optimize yields and control the quality of their crops: seedling cultivation. They prepared special nursery beds, small, carefully protected areas located right on the Chinampas. Here, seeds of maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, tomatoes, and other essential crops were sown under ideal conditions. This allowed them to better control germination, protect young plants from pests, and ensure a healthy start. Once the seedlings were strong enough, they were carefully transplanted into the main planting rows on the Chinampa. This technique minimized risk, maximized space, and allowed for multiple harvests each year. The process of caring for crops on the Chinampa also had its own unique features. Thanks to a natural irrigation system through capillary action, farmers didn't need to carry water manually to irrigate. Instead, their efforts focused on maintaining soil fertility and protecting the crops. One essential and regular task was dredging nutrient-rich mud from surrounding canals. This mud wasn't just used to rebuild and maintain the height of the Chinampas, but also directly served as a powerful organic fertilizer for the plants. Think of it as a continuous recycling cycle. Waste from the lake ecosystem becomes nourishment for the crops. Weed control was also an essential part of the work. While Chinampa soil was incredibly fertile, it also provided an ideal environment for weeds. Farmers would spend time hand-pulling weeds to ensure that their crops didn't have to compete for nutrients. Every step of this work, from sowing, tending, to protecting the plants, was done with great care, reflecting the Aztecs' deep connection to a knowledge of agriculture. Their lives followed the rhythm of the Chinampas, growing with each seed and each sprout. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 2, the bountiful harvest, crops and crop rotation techniques. On the fertile beds of the Chinampas, the Aztecs cultivated a wide variety of crops, primarily essential food plants that sustained their empire. Maize, corn, was by far the most important crop, forming the cornerstone of the Aztec diet. Alongside maize, they also grew beans, often climbing up the corn stalks, a highly effective companion planting technique, squash and chili peppers. These three crops were commonly known as the Three Sisters, because of how well they complemented one another in Mesoamerican indigenous agriculture. Beans added nitrogen to the soil, squash covered the ground to retain moisture and suppress weeds, and maize served as a natural trellis for the climbing beans. This was a clear demonstration of their deep understanding of symbiotic relationships in nature. In addition, the Aztecs cultivated many other plants to diversify their food sources and meet various needs. These included tomatoes, sweet potatoes, amaranth, a highly nutritious grain, and chili, an indispensable spice in their cuisine. Fruit-bearing trees like avocado and various tuber-producing plants could also be found on or around the Chinampas. This diversity not only ensured a plentiful food supply but also helped mitigate the risks of crop failure due to pests or poor harvests. Crop rotation was also naturally practiced on the Chinampas, though perhaps not in the rigid form we recognize today. With the ability to harvest multiple times a year, Aztec farmers could flexibly alternate crops between growing cycles. For instance, after a maize harvest, they might plant beans or squash to replenish soil nutrients, or short-cycle leafy vegetables. This helped maintain the soil's fertility sustainably without the need for fallowing. Moreover, the use of high-quality seeds and seedling propagation techniques played a crucial role in ensuring crop productivity. By sowing seeds in controlled environments and transplanting only the healthiest seedlings into the main plots, they maximized survival rates and crop growth. This was especially beneficial in making the most of the time and space on the Chinampas, allowing for continuous year-round food production. All these factors, the diversity of crops, integrated farming techniques, rotation practices, and seedling propagation methods, contributed to the exceptional productivity of the Chinampas. They became an indispensable lifeline for the Aztec Empire. Life on these floating islands was not just labor, it was a refined agricultural art, passed down through generations. Wonderful. Let's continue with Part 3. A diverse ecosystem: water, soil, and wildlife. Chinampas are not just plots of farmland, they are complex, vibrant ecosystems where the interaction between water, soil, and wildlife plays a crucial role in maintaining productivity and natural balance. Think of the canals that surround each Chinampa. They're not just waterways for transportation or sources of irrigation. They are also ideal habitats for a wide variety of aquatic life. Fish and amphibians thrive in this canal system. Small fish can feed on insect larvae that may harm crops, while their waste enriches the water with nutrients. Amphibians like frogs and axolotls also help control insect populations. Their presence is a strong indicator of the health of the aquatic ecosystem. In addition, waterbirds often visit the Chinampa areas to feed on insects and small fish. Some bird species help disperse seeds or control pests. While they may occasionally nibble on crops, overall, they are an essential part of the food chain and the natural balance. Even various types of insects, from pollinators like bees and butterflies to those that feed on weeds, all play their own roles in the Chinampa ecosystem. Aquatic plants such as reeds, water hyacinths, and algae grow abundantly in the canals. Though they might appear to be weeds, they actually play a vital role. They filter the water, absorb excess nutrients, and provide shelter for many small animals. When these plants die, they sink to the bottom of the canal, decompose, and become nutrient-rich mud that the Aztecs used to fertilize the Chinampas. This is a perfect recycling cycle, turning organic matter from the water into nourishment for the soil. This diverse ecosystem creates a resilient and self-sustaining natural environment. The water in the canals helps regulate temperature, creating a stable microclimate for the crops. Animals and plants work together to manage pests, maintain soil fertility, and ensure overall ecological balance. The Aztecs did not need to rely heavily on chemicals or artificial methods. The ecosystem itself self-regulated and provided the necessary services for agriculture. This was not just a farming system, it was a prime example of agriculture in harmony with nature. Wonderful. We'll conclude Chapter 4 with Part 4. Beyond agriculture, community life and cultural connections. Life on the Chinampas was not just about planting and harvesting. It was also at the heart of community life and deeply intertwined with the culture of the Aztecs. These floating islands were not merely fields, they were homes, social spaces, and symbols of a civilization's ingenuity. Many Aztec farming families lived directly on or very close to the Chinampas they cultivated. Picture small houses built from local materials, surrounded by lush gardens with canals serving as the main thoroughfares. Children likely grew up playing beside the waterways, learning to paddle canoes and becoming familiar with farming work from a very young age. Women might tend to their families while also participating in lighter farming tasks or processing agricultural goods. This was a closely knit life where family and work were deeply intertwined. The Chinampas also played a significant role in shaping the social structure of Tenochtitlan. The canal system was not only for agriculture but also served as a vital transportation network, linking different parts of the city and its neighborhoods. Harvested crops were loaded onto small boats and transported directly to the bustling central markets of Tenochtitlan, where they were traded or sold. This created an efficient supply chain and a vibrant market economy. Culturally and spiritually, the Chinampas held profound meaning. For the Aztecs, agriculture was not merely an occupation. It was a ritual, a sacred connection to the gods of nature. The fertility of the soil, the abundance of water, and the growth of crops were all seen as blessings from the deities. Ceremonies and festivals were often held to thank the rain gods, the earth gods, and the maize gods, praying for plentiful harvests. The Chinampas, with their continual productivity, stood as living evidence of the gods' favor upon the Aztec people. In summary, life on the Chinampas was not just about dry agricultural techniques. It was a vivid tapestry of human resilience, adaptability, and environmental transformation, a story of how a community could thrive through the harmonious blend of labor, wisdom, and reverence for nature. We now continue with Chapter 5, Overcoming Challenges, Water and Pest Control, where we explore how the Aztecs overcame challenges related to water and pest control on their Chinampas. Part 1. The Art of Water Management, Dikes and Canal Systems. Farming on a lake system like Lake Texcoco offered numerous benefits, but it also came with significant challenges, especially in managing water levels. The rainy season could bring severe flooding, threatening to submerge the Chinampas and the entire city of Tenochtitlan. Conversely, the dry season could cause water levels to drop, drying up canals and affecting the Chinampas' ability to self-irrigate. The Aztecs had to develop a sophisticated water management system to respond to these fluctuations. Their first and most important solution was the construction of a complex network of dikes. These dikes, built from mud, stones and plant materials, were impressive in scale and a remarkable engineering feat for their time. Their primary function was to protect Tenochtitlan and the Chinampa areas from floodwaters pouring into the lake from rivers and streams during the rainy season. Imagine these massive earthen walls, raised by human hands, standing firm against the force of incoming water. However, the dikes weren't just for keeping water out. Some of them were specially designed with sluice gates, allowing the Aztecs to control the flow of water in and out of specific areas of the lake. This was especially important in managing water salinity. They could open the gates to let fresh water from rivers and streams into the Chinampa zones, helping to dilute brackish water and create optimal conditions for crops. In contrast, during the rainy season, they could close the gates to prevent brackish or flood water from entering sensitive farming areas. Alongside these large dikes, the intricate network of canals interwoven among the Chinampas also played a vital role in water management. These canals were not only transportation routes but also part of a broader irrigation system. By regularly dredging the canals, the Aztecs maintained their depth and water flow, ensuring circulation and regulation of water levels throughout the Chinampa system. Dredging also prevented the overgrowth of aquatic plants that could obstruct the flow. All of these efforts demonstrate that the Aztecs were not merely farmers, but also master hydraulic engineers. They transformed a challenging environment into an advantage, ensuring that the Chinampas always received the right amount of water, of the right quality, to sustain high productivity throughout the year. Wonderful. Let's continue with Chapter 5. Part 2. Controlling salinity, ensuring fresh water for the Chinampas. As we know, Lake Texcoco was primarily brackish. This posed a serious problem for agriculture, because most of the Aztec staple crops, such as maize and beans, required fresh water to grow. Continuous irrigation with brackish water would lead to salt accumulation in the soil, poisoning the plants and reducing yields. The Aztecs tackled this challenge with a clever combination of engineering and an intimate understanding of nature. Their key solution was a system of dikes to block saltwater. The most famous of these was the Nezahualcoyotl dike, constructed in the mid-15th century under the leadership of Nezahualcoyotl, the ruler of Texcoco and a great architect. This massive dike, approximately 16 kilometers long, divided Lake Texcoco into two parts. The western side, which held fresher water and included Tenochtitlan and the main Chinampa zones, and the eastern side, which remained brackish. By preventing the brackish water from the east from spilling over, they effectively created an artificial freshwater lake for the empire's vital agricultural area. Within the portion of the lake protected by the dike, the Aztecs developed a complex network of canals and irrigation ditches to channel fresh water from mountain rivers and springs down into the valley and into the Chinampa areas. This fresh water was not only used to maintain the water level in the canals, but also to dilute the salinity of the lake water in the cultivated areas. Imagine pure streams cascading from high mountains, nourishing the floating fields below. In addition, the very structure of the Chinampas played a role in managing salinity. Since the Chinampas were built slightly above lake level, water would seep into the soil through capillary action, and evaporation at the surface would bring salts upward. However, the Aztecs regularly dredged the canals and added fresh layers of nutrient-rich mud to the fields, helping to wash away or dilute accumulated salts. Moreover, the constant moisture from seeping fresh water helped prevent excessive salt buildup. This water management system was not only an engineering marvel, it also demonstrated the Aztecs' deep understanding of soil and water chemistry. They did not merely cope with their environment, they transformed it to suit their needs, securing a reliable supply of fresh water for their unique and efficient agricultural system. Wonderful. Let's continue with Chapter 5. Part 3. Fighting the Invisible Enemy, Natural Pest Control Methods. In any agricultural system, Pests are a constant threat that can devastate crops and cause significant losses. The Aztecs, without access to chemical pesticides, had to rely on their deep understanding of nature and organic pest control methods to protect their precious Chinampas. One of their most effective strategies was crop diversification. Instead of planting a single crop over a large area, monoculture, the Aztecs often intercropped several different plants on the same Chinampa, such as maize, beans, and squash. This technique disrupted the life cycle of pests. A type of insect that feeds specifically on maize would struggle to spread rapidly when faced with a row of beans or squash growing right beside it. This method also attracted natural predators, beneficial insects or birds that feed on pests, creating a more balanced ecosystem. They also paid great attention to soil health. A Chinampa with nutrient-rich soil and strong root systems would produce plants with better natural resistance to disease. Regularly applying organic-rich mud from the bottom of canals not only provided nutrients but also improved soil structure, allowing plants to absorb nutrients more efficiently and boosting their resilience. The Aztecs also employed simple, manual methods to manage pests. Hand weeding was a regular task, not only to eliminate competition for nutrients but also to remove hiding places for certain pests. In cases of more severe pest outbreaks, they might have used natural solutions made from plant extracts known to repel insects. While we don't have many detailed records of these herbal pesticides, it is likely that the Aztecs relied on folk knowledge of mildly toxic or strongly scented plants to protect their crops. Moreover, the diverse ecosystem of the Chinampas, as we discussed in the previous chapter, played a crucial role. The presence of birds, frogs, and other predatory insects helped maintain a natural balance, effectively controlling pest populations. Rather than attempting to eradicate pests entirely, the Aztecs sought to manage them, maintaining a certain number to support a sustainable food chain. This was a sophisticated ecological approach, quite different from the modern mindset of eliminating pests entirely. Wonderful. We are concluding Chapter 5, Part 4, The Sustainability of an Ancient System. Lessons from the Chinampas. Water management and pest control on the Chinampas were not just isolated techniques but integral parts of a holistic system, demonstrating the remarkable sustainability of Aztec agriculture. While many other ancient civilizations faced land degradation or collapse due to poor resource management, the Aztecs developed a self-sustaining system that even improved over time. Let's look at how they handled nutrients. Instead of letting organic matter accumulate wastefully at the bottom of the lake, they turned it into a primary source of fertilizer for their soil. Regular dredging of the lake bed not only provided nutrients but also maintained the depth of the canals, allowing for smooth boat transportation and water circulation. This is a perfect example of a circular economy applied hundreds of years ago. What seemed like waste was transformed into a valuable resource. Moreover, the biodiversity within the Chinampa system was another key factor in its sustainability. The cultivation of multiple crops, the presence of birds, fish, beneficial insects, and aquatic plants created a balanced ecosystem. This ecosystem could self-regulate and naturally protect itself from pests and diseases, minimizing the need for artificial interventions. This stands in stark contrast to modern monoculture agricultural models, which are more vulnerable to pests and require heavy chemical inputs to sustain. The adaptability of the Chinampas is also noteworthy. This system could function effectively regardless of seasonal fluctuations in water levels, thanks to its system of dikes and water channels. They didn't merely resist nature, they worked with it. This created a resilient food production system, less affected by external factors. Finally, the success of the Chinampas was not solely based on technical knowledge but also on the strong social organization of the Aztecs. The construction and maintenance of the Chinampas required the coordination of thousands of workers. Communities worked together to sustain the system and ensure food security for all. This is a testament to how a society can achieve extraordinary accomplishments when it is well organized and united in a common goal. The lessons from how the Aztecs managed water and controlled pests on the Chinampas remain highly relevant today. They show that sustainability, efficiency, and adaptability are not modern inventions. but have been wisely and subtly practiced by ancient civilizations. We now continue with Chapter 6, where we explore the impact of Chinampas on the prosperity of the Aztec Empire. Chapter 6, Chinampas and the Prosperity of the Aztec Empire. Part 1, The Food Foundation, Feeding a Booming Population. Have you ever wondered how a massive city like Tenochtitlan, with a population reaching into the hundreds of thousands, an astonishing number in ancient times, managed not only to survive but to thrive without vast stretches of farmland surrounding it? The answer lies in the Chinampas. These were not merely garden plots, they were lifelines, a solid foundation of food production that sustained an empire. The key factor was the high and continuous productivity of the Chinampas throughout the year. As we've learned, these floating plots of land allowed for multiple harvests annually, sometimes up to 7 crops a year. Compare that to traditional agriculture in other regions, which typically yielded only 1 or 2 harvests. This dramatic difference meant that Tenochtitlan had an unprecedentedly stable and abundant food supply. And this was absolutely critical for a large urban center, where the demand for food never ceased. This steady food supply helped solve one of the most fundamental challenges of any society, ensuring food security. With plenty of maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, and other vegetables, the Aztecs didn't have to worry about famine or severe food shortages, issues that could easily lead to social unrest and even the collapse of an empire. With the assurance of food security, resources and energy were freed up, allowing people to focus on other pursuits such as construction, trade, the arts, and military endeavors. Moreover, producing food right in the heart of the empire, or very near it, significantly reduced the costs and difficulties of transportation. Instead of relying on long, expensive, and inefficient supply lines to bring food from distant regions, the Chinampas enabled crops to be transported easily by boat through a network of canals straight to local markets. This not only ensured freshness but also optimized the supply chain, allowing food to reach the population quickly and efficiently. In short, Chinampas were more than just an agricultural method. They were a strategic solution to the food challenges of an ancient megacity. They transformed an environment that seemed unsuitable for farming into a massive breadbasket, laying a solid foundation for the growth and prosperity of the Aztec Empire. Wonderful. Let's continue with Chapter 6, Part 2. Economic Leverage, Trade and Taxation. Chinampas not only ensured food security but also served as a powerful economic lever for the Aztec Empire. The abundant and diverse agricultural yield from these floating gardens fueled vibrant trade and formed the foundation of the empire's taxation system. Imagine the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan, especially the great market of Tlatelolco, where goods from across the empire were gathered. Agricultural products from the Chinampas made up a significant portion of the items traded here. Small canoes loaded with maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, tomatoes, and fresh vegetables would arrive through canals that led directly to the heart of the market. This not only supplied food for the city's population but also created a stable economic current. Farmers could sell their surplus crops and receive other goods or currency in return, often cacao beans, seashells, or cloth. The surplus of food generated by the Chinampas also allowed the Aztec Empire to support a segment of the population not directly involved in farming, including artisans, soldiers, priests, and government officials. These individuals could focus on their specialized roles, contributing to the cultural, artistic, military, and administrative development of the empire. Without a stable food supply, everyone would have had to spend most of their time growing their own food, and society would have struggled to develop such complexity. Moreover, agricultural output from the Chinampas was a vital part of the Aztec taxation system. Chinampa lands owned by the state or noble families were often required to pay a portion of their harvest as tax. This provided a stable and reliable source of income for the imperial court, helping to fund massive public construction projects, maintain the army, and organize religious ceremonies. Agricultural wealth directly reinforced the empire's power and its capacity for expansion. In summary, the Chinampas transformed Tenochtitlan from a city in the marshes into a thriving economic hub. They not only fed the people but also laid the material foundation for trade, labor specialization, and the consolidation of Aztec imperial power, making the empire a formidable force in Mesoamerica? Wonderful. Let's continue with Chapter 6. Part 3, Military Power, Logistics Behind a Mighty Army. A powerful empire like the Aztec could not have survived without a strong and well-maintained military. And what makes a military truly powerful? It all comes down to solid logistics, especially a plentiful food supply to nourish thousands of soldiers during both peace and wartime. This is where the Chinampas played their irreplaceable role. Imagine a massive Aztec army preparing for a military campaign. Thousands of warriors needed to be provided with enough calories and nutrition to maintain their health and strength. The steady food supply from the Chinampas ensured that the soldiers had enough maize, beans, and other essential foods. This not only gave them the energy to fight but also helped maintain morale and discipline within the army. A hungry army is rarely a victorious one. In times of war, the continuous productivity of the Chinampas became absolutely critical. As military campaigns unfolded, food transportation from distant regions could be disrupted. But with Chinampas located right in the heart of Tenochtitlan and surrounding areas, the empire could maintain a reliable food supply for the army without depending heavily on vulnerable supply routes. This allowed the Aztec military to operate with greater flexibility in their campaigns. Furthermore, the agricultural wealth generated by the Chinampas indirectly strengthened Aztec military power. It provided the empire with enough resources to equip its army, build defensive structures, and sustain an effective command system. A prosperous economy supported by the Chinampas helped create a stable society, capable of mobilizing and supporting a formidable military force. Conversely, the conquered lands or tribes under Aztec rule were often required to pay tribute in the form of food. However, Tenochtitlan did not rely solely on these external sources. The Chinampas provided a basic safety net of food security, allowing the empire to remain self-sufficient and powerful even when tribute supplies were interrupted. In short, the Chinampas were not merely gardens. They were a strategic asset, forming the backbone of military logistics for the Aztec army and directly contributing to the empire's ability to expand its territory and maintain dominance throughout the Mesoamerican region. Wonderful. Let's conclude Chapter 6. Part 4, A Symbol of Power and Wisdom, the Legacy of the Chinampas. Far beyond their role as a source of food and economic foundation, the Chinampas became a powerful symbol of the Aztec Empire's strength and intelligence. They were not merely agricultural plots. They were living proof of resilience and the mastery of an entire civilization. Imagine visitors or newly conquered peoples arriving in Tenochtitlan for the first time. The first thing they would see was a vast city rising from the water, surrounded by an endless network of lush, fertile gardens. This breathtaking sight must have left a profound impression, showcasing the wealth, technical ingenuity, and extraordinary organizational abilities of the Aztec people. It was a clear message of power: we have not only conquered land, we have conquered nature itself to feed our empire. The Chinampas were also a symbol of innovation and adaptability. Faced with the harsh environment of a brackish lake, the Aztecs didn't retreat. They devised a unique and unprecedented solution. They turned a weakness into a remarkable strength. This creativity not only solved the food supply problem but also placed Tenochtitlan in a uniquely superior position compared to other cities in the region, which still relied on traditional land-based agriculture. Furthermore, maintaining and expanding the Chinampa system required a high degree of social organization and resource management. It demonstrated the Aztec leaders' ability to mobilize large labor forces, coordinate large-scale projects, and sustain stability within a complex society. It was a testament to their administrative wisdom and leadership skills, reinforcing the authority and prestige of the ruling class. Finally, the Chinampas became an inseparable part of Aztec identity and cultural heritage. They were more than physical structures. They were part of the story of the Aztecs' rise, their bond with the earth and water. They represented a deep relationship between humans and the environment, a relationship built on respect and understanding. Even after the fall of the Aztec Empire, the Chinampas endured, serving as an eternal reminder of a golden era and of a people who knew how to make the impossible possible. Wonderful. Let's continue with Chapter 7, where we explore the lasting legacy of the Chinampas and their relevance today. Chapter 7. The Legacy Lives on Chinampas Today and Lessons for the Future. Part 1. What Remains of an Ancient Wonder, the Xochimilco Region. Although the Aztec Empire collapsed more than 500 years ago, traces of their ingenuity still remain. The most prominent and enduring legacy of the Chinampas survives to this day, especially in the region of Xochimilco, pronounced Xochimilco, located in the southern part of modern-day Mexico City. This is not just a historical site. It is a living agricultural system, though significantly reduced and transformed from its peak during Aztec times. Imagine what remains of Lake Texcoco today. Much of it has dried up or been built over by the sprawling metropolis of Mexico City. However, in Xochimilco, part of the ancient canal and Chinampa system has been preserved. When you arrive in Xochimilco, you'll feel as if you've stepped into another world. A maze-like network of tranquil canals, surrounded by rectangular plots of farmland. Colorful boats, known as trajineras, glide gently across the water, carrying both tourists and locals. However, modern-day Xochimilco no longer retains the scale or productivity it once had during the Aztec era. Many Chinampas have been abandoned, filled in, or fragmented by urban development. The water in the canals also faces pollution issues due to trash and wastewater from nearby residential areas. It is a constant struggle to preserve this heritage in the face of modern growth and expansion. Despite these challenges, there are still older Chinamperos, Chinampa farmers, and passionate young people working hard to maintain and revive the Chinampas. They continue to farm using traditional methods, growing maize, vegetables, flowers, and other crops to sell at local markets. Maintaining these Chinampas is not just a livelihood. It is an act of preserving an essential piece of Mexico's history and cultural identity. Xochimilco is more than just a popular tourist destination. It has been recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, underscoring its exceptional importance. It stands as living proof of the Aztecs' adaptability and ingenuity, a reminder of a sustainable agricultural system that once fed an empire. We now continue with Chapter 7. Part 2. Conservation and Restoration, the Efforts of Communities and Governments. The conservation and restoration of the Chinampas in Xochimilco is no easy task. They face numerous threats from rapid urbanization, environmental pollution, and changing lifestyles. However, there have been significant efforts from both local communities and various organizations to preserve this unique heritage. One of the greatest challenges is water pollution. The water from the canals, a lifeline for the Chinampas, is often contaminated by garbage and wastewater from surrounding residential areas. This not only affects the health of the ecosystem but also directly threatens the quality of the crops grown. Projects focused on cleaning up the canals, installing wastewater treatment systems, and raising community awareness about environmental protection are currently underway, but this remains a long and difficult battle. In addition, urban development is gradually encroaching on Chinampa areas. Many abandoned Chinampas have been filled in to make way for housing or infrastructure. This not only results in the loss of valuable agricultural land but also disrupts the hydrological structure of the entire system. To combat this, conservation organizations and local governments are working to establish protected areas, purchase abandoned Chinampas for restoration, and encourage residents to continue traditional farming practices. Still, there are positive signs. Many non-governmental organizations, scientists, and even modern chefs are collaborating with Chinamperos to promote the value of Chinampa agriculture. They support farmers in accessing markets, introducing high-quality organic products from the Chinampas to restaurants and consumers interested in sustainable food. This not only provides income for the farmers but also helps raise awareness of the importance of conservation. Restoration projects also focus on reapplying ancient techniques, such as regularly dredging mud to improve soil quality and clear the canals. Some initiatives are even experimenting with biological methods for water purification, such as using aquatic plants capable of filtering toxins. The goal is not only to preserve a historical monument but to maintain the Chinampas as a living agricultural system, one that provides food and sustains culture. This stands as a testament to how the heritage of the past can offer practical solutions to the challenges we face today. We now continue with Chapter 7, Part 3, Chinampas as a Model for Sustainable Agriculture. As the world increasingly faces challenges related to food security, climate change, and environmental degradation, the ancient Chinampas of the Aztecs emerge as a source of inspiration and a valuable model for sustainable agriculture. What makes Chinampas special in the modern context? It is their philosophy of circularity and self-sufficiency. While modern industrial agriculture often consumes vast amounts of resources, water, energy, chemicals, and generates waste, Chinampas transform waste, nutrient-rich mud from the canal bottoms, into resources, fertilizer for the soil. They require no chemical pesticides thanks to biodiversity and natural control methods. They need no complex irrigation systems, relying instead on the principle of capillary action. This is a closed-loop system, self-sustaining, self-reliant, and with minimal negative impact on the environment. Moreover, Chinampas demonstrate that high productivity can go hand in hand with sustainability. They allow for multiple harvests per year on relatively small plots of land, providing sufficient food for a dense population without the need for excessive agricultural expansion. At a time when arable land is shrinking and the global population continues to rise, this model offers valuable insight into how we can optimize production on limited land. Chinampas are also an outstanding example of regenerative agriculture. Rather than depleting the soil, they continually enrich it through the addition of mud and organic matter. This not only maintains soil fertility but also enhances water retention and overall soil health. This stands in stark contrast to many modern farming practices that erode and degrade the land. In addition, the importance of biodiversity within the Chinampa system offers another powerful lesson. The network of canals, aquatic plants, and wildlife support each other, creating a healthy ecosystem that naturally controls pests and maintains balance. This reminds us of the critical role biodiversity plays in agriculture to build more resilient food systems. In conclusion, Chinampas are not merely relics of the past, they are a living inspiration for the future. They show us that human societies can thrive by working in harmony with nature, using wisdom and creativity to build sustainable systems capable of feeding millions for generations to come. And we will conclude Chapter 7 with Part 4. Sustainable Tourism and Cultural Value. Xochimilco in the Eyes of the World. Today, Xochimilco is not only an ancient agricultural area but also a unique tourist destination imbued with deep cultural and historical significance. It is a living testament to how the heritage of the past can be preserved and shared with the world. When visitors come to Xochimilco, they not only witness the Chinampas but also experience a way of life that has endured for centuries. The colorful Trajinera boat rides through lush green canals, accompanied by mariachi music and vendors on other boats offering food and souvenirs, create a festive and distinctive atmosphere. This is an authentic cultural experience that helps travelers connect with the history and traditions of Mexico. However, developing sustainable tourism in Xochimilco poses a challenge. The pressure from large numbers of tourists can lead to pollution and the degradation of the area's natural beauty. Therefore, efforts are being made to promote responsible tourism, educating visitors on the importance of preservation and supporting the local community. The goal is to find a balance between sharing the heritage with the world and protecting it for future generations. The cultural value of Xochimilco and its Chinampas also lies in the fact that they are an inseparable part of Mexican identity. They are symbols of resilience, creativity, and a deep connection to the land and water. Local stories, legends, and folk songs are often tied to the Chinampas and life on the lake. Preserving the Chinampas means preserving a part of the soul of Mexico. Moreover, Xochimilco serves as a center for education and research. Scientists, conservationists, and students from around the world come here to study the Chinampa system and learn from ancient agricultural wisdom. The knowledge gained from researching Chinampas can be applied to address modern agricultural challenges, especially in the context of climate change and the need for environmentally friendly farming methods. In summary, Xochimilco and its remaining Chinampas are a living treasure. They are not only a reminder of the glorious Aztec past but also a natural laboratory, a cultural hub, and an endless source of inspiration for the future of sustainable agriculture and tourism worldwide. Wonderful. Let's move on to the final chapter, Chapter 8, Part 1, to explore the future vision of floating agriculture, inspired by the lessons of the Chinampas. Chapter 8, The Future of Floating Agriculture, from Ancient to Modern Times. Part 1, Modern Floating Agriculture, Learning from Ancient Wisdom. While the Aztec Chinampas were an ancient farming method, the idea of cultivating crops on water is becoming increasingly relevant and appealing in today's world. As the global population continues to rise, arable land shrinks due to urbanization, and climate change introduces new challenges. Scientists and engineers are turning back to intelligent solutions from the past in search of inspiration. So, what does modern floating agriculture look like, and what has it learned from the Aztec gardeners? Though they are no longer the hand-built mud islands of old, the core principles remain: utilizing water surfaces, managing moisture and nutrients, and optimizing productivity. One of the most common forms of modern floating agriculture is hydroponics and aeroponics on rafts or floating structures. Instead of soil, plants are nourished by nutrient-rich solutions dissolved in water. These floating farms can be built on lakes, rivers, or even the sea, opening up farming possibilities in areas lacking suitable land. We are seeing such projects emerging in places like the Netherlands, Japan, and Singapore, where land space is a precious commodity. However, there's a major difference. While Chinampas relied on natural cycles of nutrient-rich mud, these modern systems require tightly controlled nutrient solutions and often involve high-tech equipment. Still, the principle of leveraging available water and producing food near urban centers to reduce transportation costs remains the same. Another aspect where Chinampas offer inspiration is the concept of sustainability and circularity. Many modern floating agriculture projects aim to integrate ecological elements, such as using organic waste from fish, aquaculture, to fertilize plants, a system known as aquaponics. This mirrors the way the Aztecs enriched their soil with mud from canal bottoms, creating a closed-loop nutrient cycle that minimizes waste. In short, while technology has evolved significantly, the spirit of the Chinampas, transforming water into productive land, optimizing resources, and producing food efficiently, continues to guide many of today's advanced agricultural solutions. They remind us that sometimes, the greatest ideas come from the most unexpected places, from the ancient wisdom of those who knew how to live in harmony with nature. We will continue with Chapter 8, Part 2. Urban Agriculture and Chinampas, a Solution for Cities. As cities around the world continue to grow and expand, finding a source of fresh, sustainable food within urban areas has become a major challenge. This is precisely where the principles behind Chinampas can offer groundbreaking solutions for modern urban agriculture. Let's take a look at today's major cities. Millions of people need to be fed, and much of the food must be transported from distant rural areas. This is not only financially and energetically costly but also contributes significantly to carbon emissions from transportation. Urban agriculture, especially floating forms of it, offers a promising solution by producing food close to where it is consumed, thus reducing the farm-to-table distance. Even in cities without large lakes, the idea of Chinampas can still be adapted. Imagine community gardens on small canals, artificial ponds, or even on green rooftops with integrated water retention systems. These systems might not be floating islands in the literal sense, but they still apply the core principles: maximizing space, utilizing water and nutrients efficiently for cultivation. Urban floating agriculture might include vertical farms with integrated hydroponic systems, where crops are stacked in layers inside buildings. Or it could take the form of community farming projects that use floating beds or rafts on reservoirs or small urban rivers. The shared goal is to transform underutilized spaces into productive food-growing zones, contributing to food security and reducing reliance on long supply chains. Beyond food production, urban floating agriculture brings many additional benefits. It can help improve air and water quality, create greener and more livable urban spaces, and even reduce the urban heat island effect. It also generates new job opportunities and strengthens community bonds through shared gardening activities. Chinampas, with their ingenious use of water resources and exceptional productivity in small areas, remind us that we don't need vast farmlands to feed a city. Sometimes the solution lies right on the water, or hidden within ancient wisdom, waiting to be rediscovered and creatively applied to the challenges of the 21st century. Wonderful. Let's continue Chapter 8 with Part 3. Challenges and Opportunities for Floating Agriculture. While floating agriculture, inspired by the Chinampas, holds great promise, it also faces significant challenges before it can become a widely adopted agricultural solution. However, alongside these challenges lie tremendous opportunities for innovation and development. One of the greatest challenges is the initial investment cost. Building modern floating agricultural systems, especially large, complex structures that utilize hydroponics or aeroponics, can require substantial financial resources. This can be a barrier for small communities or developing nations. Additionally, maintaining these systems requires specialized technical knowledge and certain operational costs, unlike the simplicity and self-sustaining nature of ancient Chinampas. Another challenge is water pollution. Just like in present-day Xochimilco, if floating agriculture projects are implemented in polluted water bodies, the quality of the produce can be seriously compromised. Therefore, ensuring access to clean water or developing effective water filtration technologies becomes essential. Moreover, the management of waste and excess nutrients from floating systems must be carefully considered to avoid harming aquatic ecosystems. Yet these challenges also open the door for creativity. Scientists are exploring more sustainable and cost-effective materials for constructing floating platforms. They are also developing intelligent, automated systems to manage water, nutrients, and temperature, helping to reduce labor and optimize productivity. Another major opportunity lies in climate change resilience. As sea levels rise, floods become more frequent, and land becomes increasingly saline. Floating agriculture may offer a resilient solution. Floating farms can adapt to changing water levels and remain unaffected by inland floods. They can also be deployed in coastal or estuarine regions affected by saltwater intrusion, where traditional farming is no longer viable. Floating agriculture also creates opportunities for education and new job creation in the fields of green technology and sustainable agriculture. It fosters collaboration among scientists, engineers, farmers, and communities to develop innovative solutions that deliver both economic and environmental benefits. In summary, the path ahead for floating agriculture is not without its obstacles, but its potential is vast. By learning from the ancient wisdom of the Chinampas and combining it with modern technology, we can usher in a new era of food production, where floating islands are not just relics of the past, but also blueprints for the future. Wonderful. Let's conclude Chapter 8 with Part 4. Part 4, Beyond Agriculture, Social and Environmental Impacts. The vision of future floating agriculture extends far beyond just food production. It brings with it profound social and environmental impacts that have the potential to reshape how we live and interact with our cities, drawing inspiration from the lessons offered by the Aztec Chinampas. Think about the environmental benefits. By utilizing unused bodies of water for cultivation, we can reduce the pressure on arable land, helping to protect forests and preserve natural biodiversity. Floating agricultural systems can act as green lungs in urban environments, absorbing carbon dioxide, reducing the heat island effect, and improving air quality. The water in canals or reservoirs within these systems can also help regulate local temperatures, creating a more pleasant living environment for city dwellers. Furthermore, if designed sustainably, these systems can contribute to water purification and provide new habitats for aquatic species. On the social side, floating agriculture can foster a sense of community connection. Imagine community-managed floating gardens, where urban residents come together to grow food, learn about sustainable practices, and reconnect with nature. This not only provides fresh, clean food but also strengthens social bonds, offering relaxing green spaces and educational opportunities. It helps bridge the gap between consumers and the source of their food, encouraging a deeper understanding of the food system. Moreover, floating agriculture holds potential for addressing food security in vulnerable regions. For coastal communities or small island nations facing rising sea levels and limited arable land, floating agriculture may offer a viable solution to sustain local food supplies. It reduces dependence on imports and enhances community self-reliance and resilience in the face of external shocks. In summary, the story of the Chinampas is not just a historical tale. It is a powerful reminder of human ingenuity and our capacity to create sustainable solutions even in the harshest environments. From the humble mud islands of the Aztecs to the high-tech floating farms of the future, the idea of farming on water continues to inspire and reshape how we think about feeding the world. We may not want boring history for sleep forever, but the lessons from the Chinampas will surely awaken us to the boundless potential of human creativity and adaptability. And there you have it, a long but fascinating journey through the floating gardens of the Aztecs. You see, history isn't always as boring as we often think. Sometimes, within these ancient stories, we find glimmers of light that guide our future, solutions we are still searching for today. The story of the Chinampas is a powerful testament to human intelligence and resilience, how even the greatest challenges can be transformed into extraordinary opportunities. From what seemed like a useless swamp, the Aztecs created a breadbasket that fed an entire empire and left behind a sustainable legacy that endures to this day. Every time you see a field or even a small potted plant, take a moment to wonder, what can we learn from the harmony between humans and nature that the Aztecs so beautifully embodied? If stories from history that aren't boring like this one inspire you, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next adventures. Let's keep diving together into the wonders of the past, to help shape a better future.